Hey guys, today I'm here with Doug, one of our resident cybersecurity experts, and he's going to talk to me about cybersecurity insurance.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey Doug, thanks for chatting with me today. Can you explain to me a little bit about what cybersecurity insurance is to start?
Sure. So cybersecurity insurance has been around only for a few years, and it's a lot like any other insurance, which is there to, assist you in the event of a data breach or ransomware or anything else that's going to, potentially be catastrophic for an organization.
So when it comes to the kind of attack that cybersecurity insurance protects against, could you explain a little bit about what one of those attacks might look like?
Sure. So one of the more obvious ones is going to be ransomware. So when an organization gets attacked and they have malware, introduced in their environment, and a ransomware attack occurs, what ends up happening during a ransomware attack is that the virus, the malware, gets introduced into the organization. All of the information gets encrypted, and essentially they get held for ransom, which is why they call it ransomware.
Makes sense.
And usually it's in the 6 or 7 figures, that a hacker is looking for in order to, release, hopefully, release that encrypted information.
That sounds like a number that a lot of businesses couldn't handle.
It will put companies out of business.
Yeah.
And so on one hand, the business is trying to protect themselves, certainly, but the flip side that's been happening now is that the organizations that business, say that small business, wants to do business with, right? Let's say you're a law firm and you want to do business with a large insurance company. Well, those larger companies are going to sometimes insist that that smaller company has cyber insurance, because, it's their data, the customer's data that they're protecting as well.
Right. So
if a ransomware attack were to occur and that data were to get lost, the cyber insurance agency would have to pay out, to frankly the client organization.
Wow.
And that's becoming a big deal because, for one thing, it's very expensive to get cyber insurance. The rules are becoming a lot more strict, to be able to get cyber insurance itself.
How so?
When you go to apply for cyber insurance, they send you a form. And on that form, they're going to want to know all about your cybersecurity posture. So they're going to want to be seeing, do you have somebody dedicated to cybersecurity in your organization? Do you have all of the, we talked a little bit earlier about NIST, right? Which is, being able to identify and protect and detect and monitor and respond and all those things.
Right.
Having a policy in place to be able to manage, a proper cybersecurity policy. They're going to want to see that.
How safe are you?
Yeah, they may want to have a penetration or vulnerability test done to see how vulnerable they are.
Oh, wow.
Because all of that's going to be very important because the cyber insurance company, before they make that investment in covering you, they're going to want to make sure that you're just not completely hackable.
So what are the ramifications of not having cybersecurity insurance?
Well, they can be pretty steep. 60% of all small businesses will go out of business within 6 months of a severe data breach.
Wow.
And that's not only because of, say they were to be attacked by ransomware and they had to pay, say, $250,000 or $500,000. I mean, there is that problem. But there's also the problem of the lost customers, the damage to the brand, the damage of trust. It just keeps piling on and on and on.
Wow.
Not to mention the cost of cleaning up all that mess, as well as the cost of the lost data itself.
Right.
So you can easily go into the millions of dollars, in terms of that type of attack. Okay.
That's a massive amount of money.
So cyber insurance helps mitigate some of that damage, so it lets you, it may be just enough, to let you live another day, to be able to, weather that kind of storm, but so not having it certainly is serious, but also, it may be imposed on you. You may not be able to do business with a larger organization if you don't have that in place.
So when it comes to having a platform that helps mitigate the risk for these cyber insurance companies, is there anything out there that really does help kind of in each area that you mentioned? There's
a lot of, when we talk about cybersecurity best practices, there's a lot of components to that, okay? And one of the components is, this is one of the questions that a cyber insurance application would ask, is that, are you conducting employee training? Do you have a cyber aware culture?
Right.
And part of that, is being able to train employees, let's say, to be more cyber aware, put them through simulated phishing events, things like that. That's one aspect.
Okay.
Then they're going to be looking at what kind of stuff are you protecting? For instance, are you protecting cloud applications? Are you protecting, emails, for email phishing? Are you protecting your data? Do you have endpoint protection for your devices? All of these things. Each one of those categories I just mentioned have entire industries built up around them.
Wow.
But they're very expensive and they require a lot of resources to maintain. One of the things that Coro does, frankly, that's unique, is that we've been able to unify, all of these core domains of protection, into a very easy to use platform that's extremely affordable because it's built for small businesses. If you tie in the best practices within, with the employee training, best practices, with the culture, and you merge that with the level of protection, a unified platform like ours, you've ticked a lot of boxes.